think one key issue that hasn't really been discussed in this election campaign is poverty. I think one of the things that's really scarring our nation at the moment is the divide between rich and poor, and it's a widening divide. And we know that countries that have less of a gap between rich and poor do far better. Many of the Scandinavian countries, for example, it makes everyone happier, there's less jealousy, there's less family breakdown, everything follows that basic tenet. And it's barely been mentioned in this election. And I think where the Liberal Democrats score really highly on that is our proposition in our manifesto that we rebalance the tax system, because it's about fairness. And it's particularly about fairness for those who work hard, long hours, but don't get in payment the money that you might get if you were, say, a banker. And at the moment, those in low paid work pay more proportionally in tax than those who are higher paid. I think the Lib Dem policies that really attract young people, apart from Nick Clegg now being subject of Cleggomania, are around university tuition fees. I think young people are finding it a real barrier to be pushed into debt that lasts a lifetime before they've even started. And Liberal Democrats believe education should be free, basically. Now, we've had to put our promise to scrap tuition fees completely for both full-time and part-time tertiary education, university or college or whatever. It will take 6 years to complete that pledge, but starting with your first degree, tuition fees will be scrapped. So I think that's attractive. I think the fact that we say that you can vote at 16, and in fact that's a United Kingdom Youth Parliament manifesto demand, and it's always been our policy. So I think those kind of things. And I also think young people can see that we have an unfair voting system. The BNP feeds when people feel neglected by whoever is in government. So the Liberal Democrats have always worked wherever they can to make sure that you listen to people. I think Labour's made a hideous mistake in sort of paying no attention to what they have regarded as a block vote, theirs by right, and that's been the poor or the immigrants, ethnic minorities who actually aren't immigrants, who have been here forever. They have said, well, that's our block vote and we don't need to listen to them. And what happens in those areas, like anywhere, people feel there's a housing battle, for scarce resources. And Liberal Democrats have always said, well, I in particular actually have always written about housing allocation, because that's a flashpoint for people who say immigrants come, they get everything immediately, and the people who've always been here get nothing. And of course that's actually not the case, but perception is everything. It was very disappointing in the recent equality bill to find that it's called mandatory pay audits, which is kind of a real mouthful. What it means is companies being forced to publish their pay scales so that individuals in that company can see whether they're being discriminated against. And if they're doing the same work, it then puts the power into the hand of the individual to take that case to tribunal. There's a whole issue about backlogs in tribunals too. But disappointingly, Labour failed to make it mandatory. They've made it voluntary for another 4 or 5 years, and it's 40 years since the Equal Pay Act, and we know that women still get about 17% less than men for doing the same bit of work. So that's one very key issue. Flexible working should be on demand by anyone according to their circumstances. It's not just women who have to flexibly work. We'll never have equality if we only let the women do it. It's got to be anyone. And it could be caring for parents as opposed to caring for children. The recent leader debates, which have sort of galvanised the whole country into suddenly actually being interested in politics, have shown that the traditional media, broadcast media, has an immense power. Whether it has, it's a more immediate effect than the social media, which we've heard so much about. And I think the Liberal Democrats' sudden surge was just waiting to happen. It just needed that exposure, because I think what happened was when the nation, Nick was embodying Liberal Democrat principles and policy, but when people saw him, they liked what they saw and they liked what they heard. So, and it was immediate, and it reached 11 million people, and then the coverage thereafter reached everybody else. But the social media has played a big part too. And right now it's very interesting. Do you remember X Factor, where they the Facebook group tried to get Rage Against the Machine at #1. And now that same group is backing the Lib Dems. They say, we've got Rage Against the Machine to #1, we're going to do it for the Liberal Democrats. And within a week they've got something approaching 100,000 people in this. I think the Liberal Democrat message to interfaith and communal work and all of those community issues is that they do fantastic work, that those sort of really they strengthen the community, and the Liberal Democrats will work with all groups and all communities to continue that very good work.